Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Open Peace podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to be joined again by Corey Gill Shuster, founding member of the Ask Project. We also have Mon Amie with us, who is also involved with the Ask Project and helps Corey out with a lot of the translations from Arabic to English. So it's really, really fantastic to have you with us as well, Mon Amie. And of course, we are joined by our other member, Anna. It's great to have you back on the show, Anna. Welcome back. Great to have you with us. Really, really good. So let's get straight into it. Mon Amie, it's a pleasure to have you on the show. It's the first time we've had you on. I'd like to know what's it like working with Corey and asking questions within Israel and within Palestinian territories and Palestine. What's your experience from doing this with Corey? Mon Amie, can she hear?
Can you hear the?
Yes,
did you hear the
I can
question?
now. Sorry, something happened. No.
Oh, okay, no
sorry,
worries.
I didn't.
Oh, it's okay, no worries. I'll just repeat that. I was just wondering, what's it like to work with Corey as a translator, and some of your experiences from working together within Israel and within Palestine.
Well, I can say this. I've known Corey for about 7 years now, and I've honestly grown professionally and personally. I've learned a lot about my people, the Israelis. I've become a better translator. I've become braver. It's opened up my eyes. I can think of a few funny stories. I can think of some sad stories. Yeah.
Can I ask,
It's been, yes.
how did you guys meet?
It's a question for me or for Corey?
Both of you, I guess.
Go ahead.
Okay. A common friend. So Corey asked someone for a translator, and she's a common friend, and linked us through an email, and we've been working together since.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I was wondering, you said you had some funny stories and some sad stories. Maybe if we start off on the funny ones, yeah. Have you got anything you can share with us?
Corey, which one should I choose?
Well, there's the story about when I see houses that I think are beautiful in Palestine. Go ahead. You could tell that one.
How the houses are beautiful.
Well, and when I look at houses, and what do you say?
So when Corey sees a pretty house, with a garden and like old structure, he says, "This is a nice house. I want a house like this." So I would jokingly say, the Jew likes the house. Just walk right in and take it. That's very easy. That's how it happens. Yalla. Another time, we were asking a group of Palestinian students about why they fast. So it was like a group of 10 people, and we were in a small room. And a lot of them said it helps you lose weight, it helps you get healthier. And Corey said under his breath, "Is that why everybody gains weight in Ramadan?" So I kicked him, and he put it in the subtitles. My translator kicked me.
Oh my God.
Oh, that is great. That is great.
Yes, I get myself in trouble a lot.
We do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I can hear her. I don't understand Arabic very well, but I'll phrase something one way, and I'll know she'll say something about the foreigner wants to know. And that's like, he's not Arab, he's not Muslim, he doesn't understand. He's not, you need to feel sorry for him because he asks really dumb questions.
Have you guys ever had difficulties where obviously you're coming, I don't know your background, Mon Amie, but Corey, did you make Aliyah to Israel?
Yeah, years and years ago.
So you Aliyah, and Mon Amie, are you an Israeli citizen or not?
I'm a Palestinian, born and raised.
Gotcha. So no citizenship. No, you don't have Israeli citizenship.
No,
Gotcha.
she has no way to get into Israel.
Oh wow. Okay, so you live in, I'm guessing, the West Bank. So you guys are coming from super different backgrounds, and how you view this conflict. Has that ever caused like issues, or have you guys had to like work through really different perspectives between the two of you?
You can answer first.
I wanted you to answer first. Yeah, for sure. There are things that she will translate into English that I assume mean one thing, and it turns out it means something very different. Not because of the translation, but because the realities of how people speak, the cultural codes are really, really different. And the major one, which always gets on her nerves, is when I figured out after years and years, when Palestinians would say the occupation, the problem is the occupation. In my head, I always thought they meant the 67 occupation. And it turns out almost everybody, but not everybody, but most, mean the occupation of what we would call Israel, which they see as Palestine. So Tel Aviv is an occupation. So our sort of, I always ask the question, which occupation? And she kind of gives me a look like, don't you know the answer to this? Why do I have to keep asking this really stupid question? And my point is that most people out there, both internationals and Israelis, have no idea. And because it took me years to figure it out. And I was there with them. So, and they just think, oh, it must be this one person that they're asking. It must be, because everybody is so brainwashed in the international community or in Israel to think, or not maybe everybody in Israel, but a lot of people to think of occupation as the 67 occupation of 1967. So that's kind of like, she gives me, you can't see this part on camera, but she does give me a look when I ask which occupation.
I roll my eyes.
Really? We have to ask this stupid question again? I'm like, yes, we do.
Oh, another stupid question we have to ask. Okay, so it's only stupid because culturally it's not accepted, but because he's an ajnabi, he's a foreigner. That's the excuse I use. People would answer me and they're like, oh, it's okay if he's asking. Sometimes we have questions that are more directed to Christians or more directed to Muslims. So if you can't tell by the way a person is dressed or by a cross they're wearing, we would ask, and then people would say, like, people would give us a look, and then I would just point at Corey saying, he's asking, this is for his interviews. I know, or I know not to ask. Something more serious that happened, mostly, like, I can think of the one time when we were in Colombia when the guy recognized you. And he got so mad at us, and he got mad at me because I was working with an Israeli, and this is considered normalization. How could you do this? You're a normalizer. And he hinted at treason. He hinted at being immoral, doing something wrong. And that was a tough day. So,
for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
We had a
sorry,
long talk after that about what could, if maybe she'll even stop translating because it's too much. And luckily this sort of accusation does not happen very often, right? What I mean?
Alhamdulillah, so, thank God.
It's sort of like it's not black and white. It's not that most people think it's okay. It's sort of more of it's a gray area for her. So she gets a lot of crap, including from her friends, for what she does. Which is very difficult, and I appreciate that. So sometimes I say I'll only ask the question in English, and we'll see the first time if it's a really taboo question in Palestinian culture, whether politically or culturally, and we kind of gauge how people react. And actually, I gotta say that at least my impression is, Mon Amie, maybe you see something different, but most people in 99% of the questions actually react very surprisingly, very maturely, and very professionally. I don't know if that's the right word, but saying, okay, I see it from your perspective. They don't agree, but they don't get necessarily mad. I get Israelis getting mad at me more often. That's the question that I ask.
They would be willing to answer.
Yeah, they're willing to answer. They don't just, where Israelis will go, what kind of stupid question that is that, and walk away. That happens sometimes. Yeah. And that's partially because I'm a foreigner and they see me that way and they're trying to be polite, which Israelis are often not very polite.
They try to help us.
Yeah, and try to help us and that sort of thing. I think the only one that I noticed that people got very, very uncomfortable is when we ask questions related to the Palestinian Authority. That people get very uptight. The other ones, which are even more taboo, I find they don't get as uptight. So I don't know. That's my impression.
Even the religion ones.
Religion ones, they would be willing to, they're just, with religion, they're happy to tell you more about it so that maybe somebody or maybe sometime this person would be willing to come into Islam. So yeah, but the one about the Palestinian Authority, we were once in the old city of Nablus and I didn't know it very well. And we were in a bakery where there were 3 generations of like men, young men and boys. There were like 12 people, 13 people. And Corey asks them, so first, we didn't know how to convince people to answer on camera before knowing the question. But later on, we figured out a way to get them to not ask for the question before we turn on the camera. So they were like, what's the question? And I said, Corey, don't turn on the camera yet. And I told them, the question is, what do you think of the Palestinian Authority? Everybody in the bakery started laughing. They started laughing. And Corey was like, can I film this? I said, no, because we can't run fast enough and we don't know where to go. So it's both scary and funny at the same time. So a lot of times it's that kind of combination.
Which to us as Westerners is, you know, what do you think of your government? Seems like such a neutral question, right? Even if you are asking Trump supporters or anti-Trump people, it just sounds so neutral. But to them, it's so it has so much meaning, and it can get them in a lot of trouble if they answer in a way which is against the Palestinian Authority.
When we asked them about what will happen when Mahmoud Abbas dies, I had to say what will happen when Mahmoud Abbas is no longer president.
Yeah.
And then they can imagine what will happen to him.
Yeah, there's just a lot of more taboos on the Palestinian side than on the, well, for sure, than there are for people in the U.S. or in the UK, but even many more than even with religious Jews. There's just so many. There's certain things you just can't. I remember once. I remember we were in a mall. I think it was in Ramallah, and I was talking to some guy from Gaza, Mon Amie. You remember this? And I said stupidly to argue with them, "Who cares about Allah?" And what I meant by that was, who cares about religion? Like, not directly, but, I'm an atheist, so I don't, like, it's all very meaningless to me. And she actually kind of hit me in the back of the head and said, no. We're not saying that.
I think that was deserved, Corey, to be honest.
Yeah. I've said things to religious Jews where I can tell I went too far. And things just slip out. I say the wrong thing all the time. So,
but one of the things. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
Go ahead, Amir.
No. Go on. Go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to ask, because you talked about, obviously, Mon Amie, you're doing this at kind of a risk to yourself, and a lot of societal pressures telling you not to do this work. Why do you choose to do it anyways?
At first, I was really scared. I'm not going to start singing I was petrified, Corey, don't. But it was scary at first. But then I started to learn how to tell people, how to approach them. And I slowly worked up the courage to tell people that this guy is an Israeli. And when you find the correct way to approach people and to tell them this, it's absolutely fine. They would actually be happy. The people that we told that Corey is an Israeli were happy. So I continue to do this because, first of all, Corey and I have grown to become best friends. Second of all, it's work. Third of all, it's continuing to help me grow. It's continuing to help me become a better person in many ways.
That's amazing to hear, Mon Amie. And I just want to like reinforce what you guys do and what you're doing. I think it's such a unique project, and I think it asks the tough questions. It gets out there on the ground, and it asks the questions that the, let's say, mainstream media are not asking. And I think it's just a wonderful project, and I know for a fact that it keeps many people that don't live in the land and abroad, whether they be Israelis or Palestinians, involved in the conversation and understanding what is actually happening here on the ground. So, long may it continue, and may the partnership flourish more and more. One thing that I did have on my mind is when you said the guy basically called you, treasonous for your work and for what you do. Do you not think that it's a bit two-faced to say that when so many Palestinians work with Israelis on a day-to-day basis, whether that be in business or agriculture or in the construction industry, and of course much of the Palestinian national product is traded with Israel. So how does that person toe the line with that kind of thought of treason? Wouldn't that make half of the Palestinian people treasonous?
Well, first of all, the people who go and work inside Israel and the business that's being done, that's not treasonous in this society because it's work. And you can say that some people are forced to work inside Israel because the pay is much better over there. So you would get paid here, for example, 50 or 60 shekels a day to work for, let's say, 10 hours. In Israel, you would make 300 shekels, 350, 400 shekels a day. So that's one way. One thing. Another thing is normalizing in that person's point of view is becoming friends with the enemy, what he calls seeing things as normal. Dealing with someone who has hurt us, or their government and their history has really affected us, and just dealing with them normally. I see it in a different way. I don't see it as treason, of course. I don't see it as normalization. And the word normalization in the Palestinian context is very negative. I see it as forward. I see it as building something that could really benefit both sides, whether it's on a personal level or if it's on the global level, where people can learn when they listen to what we do.
Definitely. I'd have to fully agree with you there. And I do think that connections between peoples, even through tough times, can lead to some amazing things. And when the Jews went through the Holocaust, there were people that literally endangered their lives and the lives of their families to save Jewish lives. And, without those people, who knows where the Jewish people would be today if it wasn't for those brave people who were not part of the Jewish nation and who really risked their lives, to save people. And I do think that connecting Israelis and Palestinians is going to be key to solving the conflict in the long run. And I think you guys are making a wonderful start with the ARS project. I just wish our leaders were more willing to engage in dialogue and, an actual roadmap for peace. What do you kind of see the feeling on the street nowadays within Palestine? Is there a feeling that maybe, a peace deal could come along, or is it quite a negative atmosphere?
I want you to answer this, Corey.
Me? Oh, I don't know. I'm not on the ground. I mean, I just visit the ground.
You've been on the ground so many times, really.
My personal opinion is I don't see any huge difference since I've been the beginning until today in terms of what people think. You get older people, let's say over 50, maybe 55, who are from the Oslo years, who still maybe have some hope. They used to work in Israel, or they have some hope that there could be a two-state solution. And then everybody underneath is either very against peace, or maybe sort of a maybe let's wait and see attitude. But what I see is Palestinians saying the Israelis have to change everything, and then maybe we'll agree, maybe. So the Israelis will have to end occupation. They'll have to have, a one-state solution or whatever. I mean, nobody really frames it this way, but that Israel will have to make all the changes, and then the Palestinians will agree to accept whether or not the Jews are here. Or sometimes you get people who say, no, the Jews have to go back where they came from, period. And that's the way it is. And that's what they say. Now, what they would actually, I want to tell the people who are listening at home that, like every conflict and at all times, what people say publicly is not necessarily what they think privately exactly, or even if they think it, 100%, it doesn't mean it can't change. So keep that in mind at all times.
Yeah, I basically I'm just gonna say that I agree with Corey, and unfortunately, it is true. The younger generation is, I'm not going to say extreme, but they're losing hope. Even if they do get a chance to work inside Israel, they do not want it to keep existing. They want all of Palestine back. The older generation, like my parents, they wish that, and I think you remember this, Corey, when we asked people, would you prefer to be governed by your own people or by the Israeli administration? How many people said we prefer to be under Israeli administration? And they said this off camera because they didn't want to get in trouble, because the Israeli government administration was actually more fair. They paid better. There were better services. So there's those two, and where are we going in the future? Nobody actually knows, but it's not looking too bright for our side, for the Palestinian side.
Yeah, I would hope that there would be, young leaders and people that can hopefully on both sides lead each other's peoples to a more stable and ripen the ground for peace. I think before we've always kind of tried to rush and go, Oslo was kind of, okay, yeah, let's do it. Suddenly Rabin and Arafat shaking hands and this deal and areas A, B, C. But I don't think the foundations were dug, and I don't think anything was prepared to have peace. It was like we just tried something and then it exploded in our faces. And unfortunately, we had a lot of trouble. I think that, if we do find young leaders that are willing to promote peace and do it in a non-violent way, then I do think that can have some impact on the ground. I'd hope so anyway. Unfortunately, I do want to address an incident that happened earlier today. There was an attack just near the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem. I believe a Palestinian attacker attacked an ultra-Orthodox Jew and was then neutralized, was killed. Have you guys heard of the incident, or am I breaking this down?
I saw it on the news, but I've been home for a few hours.
I heard it on the radio on the way home. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just wondering, like, when these attacks happen, because they do happen quite often. We had one again a few weeks ago in the old city as well, unfortunately. How does that affect your work on the ground? And like, do you guys take into consideration, security and things like that when you're out filming, especially like a day after something like this happened, and the ground is more how shall I say, things are more tense on the ground, let's say.
Mon Amie, do you want to answer that first?
You can address the tension, because I'm not going to say I live here, but people are more used to this kind of news, unfortunately, right now. So, how about how you feel when you come here? After
I don't
something?
actually know. It doesn't affect me all that much. If it's something big, like there's riots at the Haram al Sharif, the Temple Mount, or Gaza, then that's sort of a bigger thing. These sort of one-off stabbings or shootings, they're scary, obviously, but I think they affect me less because it's not. I'm thinking about what if I go there? Will there be a riot at Columbia checkpoint? Will there be, will there be more army presence going in, like when I'm in Jerusalem and that sort of thing? And then the other factor I keep thinking about is, are people going to be obsessed with something that happened? So what Mon Amie referred to as, that these things happen. If I ask about what do you think of the PA, the Palestinian Authority, and they start talking about a stabbing and how the Israelis murdered this guy, because that's how they're going to view it, then it gets, from my perspective of asking these questions, it's kind of distracting, because by the time I release this, I'm not the news. So by the time I release this video, it's months later. And so no one's going to remember what we're referring to exactly. So that's what I'm thinking anyways. Trying not to go at times where everyone is going to be assessed with a very specific issue. And that's true on the Israeli side as well, I got to say. But in terms of, it's in my mind that at all times, obviously, I live here. So, and that happens, by the way, it's on my mind in Tel Aviv as well. I'm on the bus and I see someone who looks very Palestinian. I get very nervous also. It's, not nice, and I don't like feeling this way, but so it happens all the time. I actually feel, I think in some ways, safer when I'm on the Palestinian side, in the sense that around Damascus Gate is sort of a scary place. But once I'm actually, on the other side of Kalandia, nobody's thinking I'm Israeli. But with a big however, what if someone recognizes me and they think that I'm there to do devious things, as they put it? Like, that's how they view the Jews. We're up to no good. We do devious things, and we're trying to trick Palestinians into doing into losing more and more. At least I have it in my mind, from everything that I know of Palestinians, that I get nervous about that idea that someone could interpret what I'm doing as being against them. And so I got to say, when Mon Amie is with someone and they say, "Oh, what's the name of the channel?" and she starts saying, "Oh, look for Ask a Palestinians," and they take out their phone and that makes me nervous, because then they're going to see me speaking Hebrew. Then I get very nervous. Then I'm like, okay, we got to run away. They can find out. Okay, but let's run away.
Yeah.
How often do you guys? Oh,
yes.
how?
This is just to reassure Corey and everybody who's watching. I reassure everyone that he's been living here for a long time, and nobody ever asked questions except for that one guy who said, "What's he been doing here for 30 years?"
Yeah.
I tell them he's been living here for a long time. He knows about this, and he speaks Hebrew because he learned the language. He just hasn't learned Arabic, thank God, so that I can still have work. And so a little bit of humor and a little bit of information helps.
Yes.
And that's it.
We haven't had a reaction, by the way. I should say, nobody has heard me speak Hebrew and said, "Wait a second," like that hasn't happened yet, but it could. And the people it's going to happen are probably the people who are least violent. Actually, I got to say, it's usually the very politically educated people who just have this idea. We don't mix with the Israelis, period. That's threatening to us. The people who actually do the stabbings tend to be not those people. So
yeah, they're not educated, they're not curious, they're not interested.
Yeah.
And we don't really run into that kind of people.
Yeah,
we tried to go into a refugee camp once, and it blew up in our face, metaphorically speaking, and we didn't go back.
That's where I also, by the way, there's a video of that, not of Mon Amie, but of me speaking to the guy. where it's called Corey Gets Shit from a Palestinian.
I think I've seen that one.
That's actually what she's referring to.
And wait, where was that? Which refugee camp was that at?
Kalandia.
At Kalandia. Okay. Okay. So when you go to like Shem and stuff, you don't go to Balata or any of these kind of places, or
We sometimes go outside, just outside the actual gates, and then sometimes we find somebody. A couple of times I've gone with men who know either on my own or with Mon Amie to feel a bit safer.
What happened? Like, what happened? Sorry, I haven't seen that specific video. What happened when you tried to go into the refugee camp?
Well, we were in it, and we were asking questions. It was all fine, but then I started to ask a question, and partway through, the guy said, "Oh, I know who you are. I've seen your videos. I hate your videos."
And he speaks English, and he speaks English. We thought that he was a bit more open-minded. Yeah. Please go on.
So I stopped it, and I said, "Okay, this is an opportunity. I'm, if I'm periodically I'm criticizing people on the streets, right, because of their views. Usually I sort of take a neutral tone, but every so often I get a little bit critical. It's legitimate to be critical of what I'm doing. Absolutely. So I said, okay, tell me, because I've done this a couple of times and people get very uptight because they don't know how to verbalize why they're upset, and they just walk away. And he actually told me, and he even gave me an argument I disagree with, but he gave me an argument. You can look it up about how the Palestinians have suffered a lot, and I am. It's like asking a rape victim to, well, why were you wearing that, and why were you in that area, and why were you, and asking them questions and not sympathizing with them, and that's how he saw it. And I don't know which videos he actually saw, so I mean, but that was his view, and okay, that's that. I understand where he's coming from. I just disagree. I think you can ask any question to anybody at any time, but that's me, and I get in trouble for it all the time. So, and then it started in a whole thing with Mon Amie after that, because she tried to mediate between the two of us at a certain point. But that part isn't in the video.
I see. Yeah, it's tricky. It's tricky because I guess in more, let's say, conservative societies, whereas you're coming from like a liberal mind space, Corey, and let's ask whatever, let's open everything up, let's talk about it, let's discuss. There are certain subjects in more conservative society that are just taboo, and you don't want to really touch them. They're kind of swept underneath the rug, and we keep that to ourselves, and we don't really want to open that can of worms. So yeah, it's a tricky situation. Mon Amie, I was wondering, have you been teaching Corey any Arabic? Is his Arabic coming along now? Are we going to have an Arabic speaker soon?
First of all, never, because that would mean less work for me. But on a more serious note, Corey, so we have a bunch of rules that we follow when we're together. First of all, he's supposed to say that he is Canadian, and if we feel safe, we say he's Israeli. Second of all, we don't say he's a Jew. We say he's a Christian since he's Canadian, because people will ask, so is he a Jewish American? Is he a Jewish Canadian? I say no, he's a Christian Canadian. Third thing is, Corey, and I'm sorry, but we have to follow these rules, is that he is a straight Christian Canadian. No. That's first. So that means he doesn't have an accent. Now, Israelis have an accent. Are you Israeli, Amir?
Yeah, I am.
Say Beit Lahem for me.
Beit Lechem.
That's it.
And that's where I went wrong in Bethlehem.
Yes, Corey was learning Arabic, and he wanted to say the word Beit Lahem in Arabic. We had a bunch of young men around us,
right?
And Corey asked them, "Are you all from Beit Lahem?" And they started telling each other, "Oh my God, this guy is Mossad, this guy is Shabak. Let's leave, let's go, let's leave."
Oh my God.
Yeah, they all walked away. I had no idea why.
Oh man.
So I looked at Corey and I pointed around us. I said, do you see what just happened? You are never allowed to speak Arabic again because you have an Israeli accent, and it shows. And then people will think you're a spy. This is no joke. And then he'll be killed. And then because he's going to be killed, my house is going to get demolished, because that's the punishment for... You guys aren't laughing, but this is something we laugh at.
We joke all the time.
Okay.
Every time I almost fall off like a curb or get hit by a car, she's like, "You can't get killed here. My house will be destroyed because you get killed." And I'm like,
I love that you can see the humor in it, you know. I guess for people that are listening that are from, you know, more normal functioning countries, this must just all sound like complete and utter madness, you know.
Yeah.
Especially given that Corey and Mon Amie, wherever you are in the West Bank, wherever you live, it can't be that far away. It's less than a couple hours drive, you know. So it's a really crazy situation over here, and you know, inshallah, God willing and alevai, that things will change. And I do have belief. I hold a strong belief that things will improve. It's just a matter of making the right steps and getting the right people involved in the peace process, I think. Corey, one thing I was wondering as well, you know, me and you have done a bit of filming together in a few different locations. Are there any places within Israel that you find more problematic to film in, and then let's say Tel Aviv and the main cities, Haifa?
I would say there's populations that are just tougher. So the more or the less social power that a group has, the tougher it is to get them to speak on camera. So today I was in Tira and Kalantzwa, well, mostly in Tira. It was tough. So Arab Israelis, Palestinians of 48, as or Arabs of 48.
Arabs of the inside.
So they're really tough. They're really tough. They don't want to speak on camera. It's really difficult. And actually, I had somebody today with me who was Palestinian, who was a friend of a friend who just happened to tag along. And even then, they just didn't want to. And I also find Ethiopian Israelis really tough to get to speak on camera. Religious Jews or Haredi Jews, very, very ultra-Orthodox Jews, are also a bit tough. But I have a trick for that. If I say I need a religious perspective, it puts them in a mindset of, oh, I have to, you know, give a good explanation.
Educate this person.
Yeah.
Do you ever, because I feel this when I watch your videos of the Orthodox communities and some of the more, I mean, generally Palestinian society is pretty religious, and I feel like parallels almost ironically very similarly to a lot of the religious Jewish communities have more in common sometimes with Palestinian communities than a secular Israeli would.
So wait, you're asking if I agree?
Yeah, sorry.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, my joke is that someone like Aryeh Deri or somebody who's religious in Mizrahi is the one who should have been negotiating with the Palestinians all along. It should not have been a bunch of atheist or barely believing Ashkenazi Israelis. It should have been people who believe and who have a commitment to both belief and the land on both sides, because that is sort of a greater, it brings people together more, and they're going to both, and they're also going to disagree with each other a lot. But you know,
have you ever interviewed? Have you ever done interviews in the religious cities like Elad or those kinds of places?
Yeah, Emmanuel. Yeah. In settlements, you mean?
No, not the settlements, like just the ultra-Orthodox cities. Cities.
Oh, a little bit. It's harder to get to them is kind of the issue. But I was just in Modin Elitz, which is mixed. It's Ashkenazi and Mizrahi. So yes, absolutely. And then you find pockets of them in Rehovot and in Rishon, and yes, absolutely. You do. But the smaller ones, like Elad, it's a good one. I haven't been there, for example.
And I strongly recommend you go to Elad. It was like a very shocking experience for me because I have cousins there. And some of the things that Mon Amie was saying about like normalization and just like you almost feel that in reverse when you're in Elad, of the way people talk about Palestinians and Arabs is so like there's such a intense belief there, especially that they are the victims of Islamic oppression you know,
Mm.
and it's so,
As
and there's
Jews who came
no,
from Arab countries, you mean?
yeah, and there's no talking, there's no reason you should, and this is not something I agree with, but this is something that a lot of my cousins very much believe, is like, why would you even want to talk to someone like they're just, you know, like, and it's kind of funny because I almost feel it as a parallel with Palestinian community.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of sort of mirror images in societies. There's differences, obviously, because every culture is a little bit different, but in how they view the other, how they view themselves. Absolutely, these things absolutely exist. There's not much. It's kind of a flaw in what I do, because all I'm supposed to do is ask questions and a follow-up question, and I do wish I could give some analysis as going through. Going, that you have X on the other side who thinks exactly the same. And every so often I'll throw it in if it's really, really, to the point. But most of the time I'm thinking it and I'm like, well, it's not really what I do. So that's not, the
You ever think
analysis
about
part
splicing the
is the
videos together when they say really similar
Yeah.
things?
That's a
There's
good
a lot of
idea.
times that people will say very similar things on each side. There's a good conflict resolution theory about that, Memetic Violence, it's called. René Girard, I actually remembered his name. I always forget people's names, about how we tend to mimic each other. And in conflicts, we tend to, it happens in conflicts all around the world, where one side says A, and then after a while, the other side starts saying A. One side says, no, they ethnically cleansed us, and the other side saying, no, they ethnically cleansed us. And they all have their way of...
It's ours, no, it's mine. Yeah.
Yeah, and then their way of also picking through information, the cherry picking of information to prove their point. And of course, never showing how they've done the exact same thing at some point, but that will never recognize. But that's just how people act in conflicts, which is interesting.
Yep, and I think the mirror image, it really can be seen during the conflict that happened in May with the lynchings that happened on both sides.
Yeah.
When I saw that and I saw what was going on the streets, I just honestly, a part of my heart, just like it was really like it was being ripped out, because I know the good side of both the Israeli people and the Palestinian people. The welcoming nature, the kindness to people, and it was like, here's our ugliest side. Here's what we're actually capable of, where we've gone off the deep end, and it was like seeing a mirror image, unfortunately. And this is going to kind of lead on to my next question. But Corey, we do have a question here in the chat from our good friend Nir. Nir is asking, Corey, do you think that most Israelis are blind to what is actually going on across the Green Line?
It depends what he means by what's going on. So, but yes, I think that's true. If he means something like settler violence towards Palestinians, we rarely hear about it. I'm in Facebook. So this is, I would suggest to people, go onto Facebook and add yourselves to Palestinian feeds. There's like Mix Nablus, Mix Ramallah, Mix Bethlehem, things like that. I'm sure there's a lot more. And I don't mean political ones. I mean, some of them they're social oriented, but they mention if something big happens, they mention it. And maybe Mon Amie has some ideas of other ideas. But just to get a sense of what's going on or what's reported from the Palestinian perspective, we don't necessarily hear the same things on the Israeli side. So there's that aspect. And then also not even knowing what each side really thinks. And everyone thinks that they know what the other side thinks, and they don't. I used to say, and it's still true, that I think Israelis have analyzed the Palestinians better than the Palestinians have analyzed the Israelis. But that's our sort of overall. And I would say the right wing is kind of right about how they look at it. They look at the way Palestinians see things. They were closer to the truth than the left. But they don't know the nuances, and they don't know, because I'm always surprised, having been sort of brainwashed by the Israelis, what they think Palestinians are. And then every so often I find so many contradictions to that in small and big ways. In other ways, it does come up. So it really depends on what specifically he means, if he wants to explain. Mon Amie, how would you, where do you get your news? From what, besides watching the news or hearing the radio, which you can't do in Arabic, but you can do with like on Facebook feeds, it's automatically translated. So. Mon Amie?
I remember we once asked, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. I hear you.
Okay. So I remember we once asked, how do you know what the Israelis know about you? Remember this question, Corey?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it phrased in another way? Like, how do you learn about what Israelis know about you? So
yeah, we haven't finished
a lot
that
of people,
one, by the way. So don't look for that video, people listening. No. We only have a few of those. But we did ask about where you get your news, and a lot of people said Facebook.
Facebook. A lot of people say Facebook because it's the application they open the most.
Mm-hmm.
Look, when a bit of information.
Mon Amie, you're cutting out.
But different words will be used.
She's cutting out too much.
Yeah, you're cutting out a little bit there, Mon Amie.
Okay.
We can. You're back on now. I think we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, she's frozen again.
No.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a shame. It was a great question. So maybe I'm just gonna take her out of the studio, and then hopefully she can just click back on the link, and it will let her back in.
Okay.
So yeah, she's out now. Hopefully she'll be back with us in a second, and we can elaborate on that because I think it's a great question. Here we go. Mon Amie, can you hear us now? Is that okay?
Can you?
Yeah, we can hear you.
We can hear you perfectly.
Yeah. Palestinian internet. Everybody come to Palestine. So yeah, I would say Facebook, but also like when you want to learn about a piece of information or a news that happened, look at the same story from both sides and look at how things are worded and what they focus on. It's really interesting. It's the same bit of information, and I cannot really say I know of a neutral source when it comes to news about this conflict, unfortunately.
True. Yeah, each one uses their slogans and slang and propaganda ways of phrasing it.
We say martyr.
Like even
Israelis would say killed.
Yeah.
Or in Israeli news, we'll say we neutralized. And I always say, does that mean they were killed or they were just, made not harmful? Like I never quite understand if they were killed. It usually means killed, but so yeah.
I think it's it's to do with the biases of that specific organization or journalist, and I see it as well when things are reported from here in the UK media. Depending on which newspaper you're going to read, you're going to get a completely different article. The Daily Mail might say one thing, the Guardian will represent it in a completely different way, and I think this is when things fall through the cracks because any type of violence, any type of attack, any type of hideous behavior should be called out for what it is, regardless if it's on the Israeli side or the Palestinian side. Unfortunately, Jewish terror has become a thing in the last 10 years in the West Bank, and we've seen heinous acts committed by radicals over there. The Duma house bombing comes to memory. And I think that any event like that or any attack by a Palestinian it needs to be represented in the same light, and it needs to be denounced by both sides in the same light, and then maybe we will see a decrease in these actual incidents happening. I think one of the main problems is that when things do happen, you know, our leaders don't tend to come out and denounce it and try and say that these things will stop. It just kind of is, again, swept underneath the carpet until the next time. And we're always kind of, you know, a few minutes or a few days away from the next conflict or the next attack, which, you know, really, really does sadden me. You know, if you think of the amount of, you know, horrific incidents that the people here on both sides have seen in the last 30 to 40 years, it's really horrible. And for such a beautiful country, especially the Holy Land, you know, where the birthplace of these three amazing religions, I don't really understand why there's a need for it to continue. I do have a question here in the chat. I think this one is for Mon Amie. How likely do you see the possibility of escalation by either side, especially from civilian, non-organized violence?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sure. So, all would like to know how likely it is of the possibility of escalation by either side, and especially in relation to non-organized violence. So I'm thinking he's thinking like, you know, Jewish radicals or Palestinian radicals in the West Bank who just go off and do attacks.
Honestly, what we've noticed here in the Palestinian society is that those who are radicalized are the ones who are least educated and who come from very poor backgrounds. So the more education people receive, the better, I'm not going to say jobs, but the better access to resources, the better lives they have. This will decrease. This will definitely decrease. But if we continue to teach our kids to pump in the media, let's get it all back, and so on. I mean, people are sick of this. I have friends from Gaza who are sick of this. I have friends from refugee camps who are sick of this. At the end of the day, we just want to move forward. It's not about religion and the Holy Land and there's three religions. It's more about living decently. That's basically it.
Yeah. I wish that would happen. And, you know, when you say you have your friends there in Raza, is Gaza for those that don't speak Arabic. But, you know, when I think back to my granddad's days and when the Gaza border was open and there were Jewish communities within Gaza, and Gazans would come and work in the moshavim and kibbutzim alongside the border, things were so different to the way they are now. I'm not trying to paint it as all rosy and things were,
no, of course not,
you know, wonderful, but it was way better than the situation that we have now, where Gaza is blockaded. People there haven't seen the light of day for a very long time and have been through war after war, and you know, are fed up of that situation. And I actually think that Gaza holds the key to solving a lot of these issues. I just wish that you know, we can get to a solution over there, because fighting war after war is not going to get anyone anywhere, unfortunately. You know.
Are the sirens in New York or in Tel Aviv?
Tel Aviv.
Nice.
Yeah.
I live on a major street. Sorry.
It's not surprising where you live, Corey, mate. Center
People
of
in
Tel
Gaza
Aviv.
are fed up.
Yeah.
On the street level, people are fed up. Those who are joining the resistance are joining it for lack of any other opportunities. There are some people who join it because they believe in it. Fine. I'm all for resistance, but smartly, not just throw something that is pointless or do something, any act of resistance that is pointless. Think of it. Think of what the effect will be, what the impact will be, and how it will be retaliated, how it will be responded to. When you throw a rocket, of course, the response, unfortunately, is going to be much bigger and it's going to do horrendous things. But when you But when you fight and resist with education, with demonstrations, with campaigns, yes, you're going to be banned from entering Israel, but that in itself is a message. That in itself, writing about that, publishing about that, campaigning about that, does something much more than the violence that we've seen.
100%. 100%, Mon Amie. Maybe we should look at, the Czechs and the Velvet Revolution that happened over there, where they managed to have a revolution without any blood being shed. I think that could be a fantastic, book to take a leaf out of that book. It could be a very smart move for the region, because unfortunately, not just here in Israel, Palestine, the Holy Land, but all over the Middle East, we see conflicts raging constantly. And sometimes I get the feeling that, the Western powers, or let's say the big arms manufacturers, just see this area as fertile ground to make money and sell weapons. And we don't really care what happens there, as long as we're exploiting the people's needs for weapons and the people's needs for oil and gas, etc. We don't care what happens in those countries. We're good over here in America or Canada or the UK or Germany or wherever.
Speaking of business, I'm just going to give a very small example. Have you ever heard of the village called Al-Walaji? Al-Walaji. Corey, you've been there. So in Al-Walaji, it's the first place where they put where they tested the barrier or the wall or the fence.
Okay.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
different security companies from around the world came and demonstrated their product by setting up a barrier with different kinds of security setups for Israel to choose from. And until now, those different samples of barriers are still there. So this is a huge, this is really evidence of what you were saying of how arms dealers and international money being put into this conflict, because there is money to be made out of this conflict from arms and from security stuff.
Wow.
It's disturbing.
It is. And unfortunately, we're fighting an uphill battle here, guys, but we're definitely, along the right tracks, and getting Israelis and Palestinians together to discuss things. It's a step forward from, people throwing rocks and rockets and shooting at each other. That's for sure. We do have a question here for Corey. I guess he or she is a big fan. It says, hi, I've been in the live stream from the start, so fantastic for having you with us. But he wanted to know, have you been filming during COVID, Corey?
Oh, yeah. I actually put in, since COVID started, I put in the description whether or not this was filmed before or during COVID. Because I still have some material from before COVID, but during we picked times to go to the West Bank when rates were low, and before I was vaccinated, I wore. Oh, that's not my sirens. We picked before I was vaccinated. We were vaccinated. We would be wearing masks the whole time. I'm very COVID phobic. So, but now, no, we're back to normal, more or less. Hopefully. No Omicron, no big outbreaks. So it's felt pretty normal since the summer, right? I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much. So
yeah, sorry, those were my sirens.
Okay.
You switched them up.
I wanted to ask you, Corey, just while we have the chance here, why did you decide to make Aliyah? And secondly, have you ever had more judgment from Palestinians in particular because you made Aliyah? So you must be more Zionist because you chose to come here.
Well, the second question, I don't even think. I don't know. No clue if that's even a factor. I wouldn't even think that. I never, very few, I don't think any Palestinians necessarily know the term Aliyah, but they just assume Jews move here from everywhere. So I don't know. I don't know if they relate that to Zionism, the way we think of Zionism, because Zionism for them is a dirty word. Why did I make Aliyah? I wasn't even for Zionistic reasons. I mean, I'm a Zionist in the sense that I think Israel should be a state for Jews, not Jews only, obviously, but that every people, including Palestinians, need to have a state, and I think that's important. But no, I made I moved to Israel because I met an Israeli, and we were together, and he's Israeli, and we got married, and yeah, but we're since divorced, so don't
Okay.
It was 20 years. It was great. It was terrific, but we've been separated for 10 years. But I made Aliyah more for him, and because I really liked living in Israel. It's a very interesting place. It's been a lot of fun in some ways. In some ways it's a lot more difficult, but in other ways it's a great place. So I don't know. Mon Amie, has anyone ever asked why I moved to Israel? And if they connected it to Zionism?
Everybody asks me why you came to Israel. Why would he come to Israel? Why would he? Look, my family asked me this, and they don't really ask me about my work that much. My friends asked me about this. People who watch the channel told me, why did he come from Canada to Israel? Canada is better, cleaner, safer. It's just better in every way. And I say, because he wants to live here. Because he's choosing to live here. This is where he wants. If I say it's for because he's a Zionist or it's for Zionistic reasons, I would never hear the end of it. Because just like Corey said, Zionist is a bad word. It's a dirty word. It is only linked to violence. Yeah.
That's a shame. It's a shame that's the way that it's seen, because I speak for myself here, but I'm sure a lot of other Israelis would agree with me that Zionism has nothing to do with violence. In actual fact, it's just the right for Jewish people to self-determine on their ancestral homeland peacefully. That would be my definition of Zionism. It's a shame though that it has got its links to violence and maybe to some of the things that have happened here in the past. I don't know really how how to kind of get around that barrier, because I would say that maybe 95% of the Israeli Jewish population would consider themselves Zionists, apart from maybe a few fringe ultra-Orthodox communities, really.
I remember when Corey was in Canada or in Germany, and I told my friends when they asked me about him, I said, "Oh, Corey came home." So in Arabic, rawah means either went home or came home, and they were like, "Rawah." I said, "Yeah, he's home," and they're like, "He considers here home?" I said, "Yeah, he's been here for 30 years," and they just laugh, and they're like, "Wow, okay."
Do they do that because they see me as a foreigner, or because Canada is a better place in their mind?
Both, because you're not foreigner in the sense that you don't belong here. Well, yeah. First of all, they see you as a Canadian who is a Jew who doesn't belong here, even if you are Jewish. And Canada is much better. That's what they believe. Why would anybody leave Canada?
Maybe the winters, maybe.
Are we going to talk about the winters? Have you seen the winters in Ramallah? They're not that cold, maybe, but the infrastructure is terrible. Just say the word snow and there's a frenzy.
Really?
Oh, yeah, because the infrastructure is terrible.
I see.
Come and see.
And it's quite high up. How high up is Ramallah, roughly?
I'm gonna say 900 meters.
Okay,
Amir, come to
yeah,
Ramallah
fairly.
FP.
I would love
And
to. I would love
and
to.
like I joke with Corey, come to the settlements. Come try the West Bank weather. Now I'm gonna have Facebook ads about this. But yeah, this has happened.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to travel more around the West Bank, Mon Amie, to be honest. You know, I did serve, I was there positioned in Hebron for a while, you know. And in my personal life as well, I've been to a few different places. In the West Bank, I always find it very, very educational to come over to the Palestinian areas and also to the Jewish settlements to understand what those guys are saying as well, because I think it's important to even if the views of the person that you're listening to you don't agree with, it's good to listen, to take it in, to understand where they're coming from. You know, even though you completely disagree with what they're saying or what they're doing, to understand the context behind it. It's like recently there's been a thing with the ultra orthodox communities, certain ones, just to say not everybody, but you know, underage marriage has become a thing here in Israel, unfortunately. Yeah, you know, like 15, 16, 17-year-old girls getting married off very young. And I wanted to understand, why is this happening? Why, you know, what is going on here that this is okay? And, you know, it comes down to certain rabbis have control over a community and they dictate what will and won't happen according to what they see fit. And they see fit to marry people off, you know, very young. But sorry for that segue. I just wanted to point out why it's sometimes important to listen, even if the views are extreme, to listen, to understand, and get some context where these people are coming from
first.
Yeah,
And
for sure.
that's something I can tell you we unfortunately lack as Palestinians. The more educated ones, of course, know how to listen more, and they know the benefits of listening first, speaking later. But yeah, listen first, criticize later, or answer at least, and react later. Yeah.
That would be great. That would be great. We do have a little question here, Mon Amie. Oh, it's not really a question. It's just it's a statement. But one of our subscribers says here, new polls show most Palestinians in the West Bank prefer a one state where everybody is equal compared to the situation at the moment. Would you agree with that? Disagree? Maybe in the middle?
Is there an age for that poll? Like,
yeah, unfortunately not. He's just, and I haven't seen the poll myself either, so
I'm not sure exactly. People are either too busy trying to live, or they're too خلاص, they lost hope. So I don't know if we want a one-state solution where everybody goes back to their country, Cory, or you live under Palestinians. Look, we've heard it all so many times. I forgot which one we heard the most.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, and that's why at the end of the day, I'm agnostic when it comes to you know, a final deal or resolution, whether it be one state, two state, no state, 3 states, 4 states. I don't know how many states.
Hey, it's a small land, Habibi. Oh.
Yeah, I know.
Did you ever see that article where it's like a 10 million state solution? Every person has their own state.
You know, we're on our way to that, Anna. We're on our way. If you're looking at it now, there's basically 3 different states. You have Gaza and the Hamas. You have PA, the West Bank. You have Israel. It's like, you know, it's messy. It's messy.
Yeah. Okay.
We do have also here another little comment from our friend Neil. I guess this is for everyone. He said, do you think we'll ever see a football match between Israel and Palestine? Is that something that can happen?
I can give you an answer right now because I've had this conversation a few times with people who work in the Palestinian Football Federation, people who play jiu-jitsu and Jiu-Jitsu, yes. They're saying that we refuse to play with Israelis or against Israelis, or because that would be considered normalization. Although there's a lot of so at first, of course, it would be difficult culturally and politically, but there's a lot to be benefited from. There's a lot to be benefited from, economically, culturally, politically, everything. But it's very hard to look past our egos. There have been incidents in the Olympics where someone would refuse to play against an Israeli because they're Israeli. Of course, that was kind of stupid because they worked so hard to reach the Olympics, and then they're refusing over that. I hope so. I hope there can be something in sports or whatever. But again, that's considered normalization. And as we mentioned before, it's really hard for Palestinians to go near that publicly because it would be considered very treasonous.
I have a question. What percentage of Palestinians you think secretly would be okay with, like, you know, for example, you do talk with Israelis, you don't support the occupation, you're very pro-Palestinian, but at the same time you want to move on. How many Palestinians do you think are like that and just can't share those opinions publicly?
80%. And they're not being optimistic. Yeah.
Wow.
80%? What do you think, Corey?
I don't know, because I'm hearing what they want to say publicly.
I go back and forth about this. Are people really wanting something, or are people thinking something else? Sometimes I convince myself that a lot of people think the way I do and we're going to be okay. And then I hear what they say in the videos and I'm like, oh, wow, I'm from outer space. And Corey is also from another nearby planet. But I don't know.
But I also think just because someone says something and have a certain opinion doesn't mean they're willing to not accept something. I mean, even if meaning if we change the reality, if you had asked people before before Oslo, I remember being in Bethlehem, during Oslo, being in Bethlehem, and they were welcoming Israelis. If you had asked people the week before Oslo happened, would they have agreed to it? Chances are they would have said no, absolutely not. But as soon as a leader decides on something, suddenly it gives permission to those who even had a small amount of that belief, the permission. And that's the problem. There's no leaders that are giving anyone permission to think in any other way. It really isn't. So, yeah. So I mean, as much as it depresses me when I hear these attitudes from both Palestinians and Israelis, I always remind myself, look, things can always change. There's always going to be, but you have to keep in mind, there's always going to be the other side, that at least the 20%, if not more, who are going to be against something in some way, or going to find problems with it. Of course, that's going to happen.
Yeah. Well, we seem to have lost Mon Amie. Hopefully she'll be right there back with us. But Corey, I feel you there on what you were saying, for sure. I can remember speaking with there's Mon Amie, with an Iranian friend of mine in the UK years ago. And I asked him the question of how many people, what percentage of Iranians are hardliners, or what percentage believe A, B, or C. And he said, Amir, you have to take, not everybody's like me, Amir, not everybody. He said 30% to 35%, they're hardliners. They'll go with what the regime says, anything they'll say. They'll now start outlawing people who are ginger. They will go with it because I'm being serious. I'm like, that's the level of authority that these regimes have, unfortunately. I do think, though, that with kind of new forms of media, new types of discussions, a more broad voice being heard by millions and not just the same old outlets, I think that people's mindset is definitely branching out, and people are becoming more aware of the kind of things that they've been either brainwashed to believe or through other means been taught. So I can see change happening For sure. Mon Amie, I did have another little question for you there. Are you back with us? It's okay. You can hear us.
Yes.
Have you managed to come over and do any filming within Israel with Corey in any of the locations?
Corey applied for a permit for me a few times, and I was lucky enough to film with him a few times.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, I was interested in it. Was different, much more different. Yeah.
Great.
And we went for sushi.
And we went for
That's what's
sushi.
important.
Wallahi, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Wallahi, yeah. I'm glad. I'm glad the sushi in Israel is good.
We had good sushi.
So what were the differences that you saw from filming in the West Bank to filming in Israel proper?
I guess in Israel it's easier to stop people and ask them. In the West Bank, we would stand on a side and look at people. Do we stop that group? Do we stop this couple? This couple is going to say no, but because I'm bored or I want to laugh, I would tell Corey, go ask them for my entertainment. And especially if they're very conservative, the man would stand in front of the woman and say, no, go, because he's a man or something. Or yeah, but we've developed like methods of choosing people. We're not going to share, of course, unless you want to share, Corey. But yeah, we have fun.
It's all
Corey,
about the shoes.
It's all in the shoes.
Really, yeah.
It's Mon Amie's joke, but yeah, it seems to be fruitful. Meaning, if someone, mostly a woman, is wearing good sneakers, good running shoes, and not just fake patent leather, just to look good, they tend to give better answers.
Huh.
Interesting.
So I thought of you today, Mon Amie, when I was in an Arab town, and somebody said to go ask him, and I said no, he's in flip flops. We can't ask people in flip flops.
And curly
hair.
And I
meant it as a joke, but
and also we've noticed that girls with curly hair are speak English and are more willing to speak with you, even if it's a no. They're more eloquent and they're more polite when they say no than girls with straight hair.
Okay. So look out for those curly-haired women, guys.
and men.
This is all non-scientific, just so you know. But we try to keep ourselves amused while we're doing it. But
tested and proven when it comes to choosing people. Remember the guy in the pickup truck in Bethlehem?
Yeah. Good-looking guy.
Okay.
Yeah, we started even stopping cars randomly and saying, "Hi, can we do an interview with you?" At just at a light, and they're like, "Sure." I'll say Palestinians have much more patience for this, for this kind of thing, for that. But other times there's the Palestinian "fuck you," where they just walk away and like go away.
Or when they say, no, I don't speak English. That's the only sentence they know.
Yes.
I know you guys have interviewed some minority communities. Have you ever interviewed, we have a friend who's Samaritan. Have you ever been to the Samaritan village?
Yes.
Yeah.
You have, Corey.
Yeah. And I done a few interviews there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I have a video. I don't think I finished it. No, I haven't finished it. About the Samaritan view of the Messiah.
Ah.
And
so
the Jews also.
This is more for Christians. So yeah, trying to give them as much as possible.
What is the demographics of what countries view your videos the most?
Oh, in terms of numbers, it's the US, Canada, UK, Germany. And I can't remember, I think Israel was number 5 or something like that. Yeah. In terms of actual raw numbers. Palestine is really low. Palestinians don't watch.
Oh, really?
The Gulf countries, though, do. I haven't checked them in over a year, but the Gulf countries, even years ago, were watching. Saudi Arabia, Oman, UAE were watching a lot as well. And this is before we had agreements with them. So
that's cool. That's cool. So you're seeing an interest there from other Arab countries, which is it's good to know. It's good to know, and hopefully, you know, I really do hope that we can lead on through the Abraham Accords to something of substance with the Palestinians. That would be great to me. Just I guess before we go, maybe we can address that, Mon Amie. What was the kind of feeling within the Palestinian community when Israel signed the Abraham Accords with the UAE and Bahrain, and with Morocco now joining, and places like Sudan? What was the kind of feeling within the Palestinian community?
Nobody liked it. People viewed it as normalization and again, normalization in a bad way, not in a good way.
Yeah.
Even in Arabic, when someone says tatbi'a, you have to say it in a very, very low voice. So people were not happy.
I see. I can understand.
There's a definite sense of the more that Israel gets, the less Palestinians will ever get. They're going to lose more and more. There's a sense of that.
Yeah.
So, and they feel that they've been betrayed by a lot of Arab countries.
Oh yeah. So if Israel is now closer to the UAE, that means less support to the Palestinian cause, to the Palestinian people, to Palestinian workers, and to the UAE, and so on.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Which is really too bad.
I see. So maybe, you know, if politicians were brave, maybe they could have done something, you know, together on more of a wide scale, and, you know, maybe not like a peace deal with Israel Palestine quite yet, but maybe like a sort of roadmap to you know, calming everything down and focusing on actually making life better for Palestinians and Israelis here by focusing on maybe economy, focusing on tourism. I know obviously since COVID hit and tourism has been hit in the Holy Land, I know many Palestinians are suffering from this situation, and same with Israelis not having tourists come in the country. And
sorry, I have to ask you this. What do you mean by the Holy Land when you say the Holy Land?
The Holy Land, like everywhere here, from the Jordan to
From the
sea.
river to the sea. That's like our PC way of saying it in a way that doesn't seem to offend anyone.
Like Israel, Palestine, because either way I can get caught saying Israel, Palestine, and, you know, people can attack me for that or say things. So I often just say the Holy Land, you know.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but my point was that tourism is not only a huge economic benefit to both peoples, but it's also a way of bridging the gap and explaining to you know, the wider public what is actually going on here and what is the history on the land. And I think that obviously a peaceful Holy Land would be way better for tourists to come and to enjoy and to experience both Palestinian culture and Israeli society and culture. Have you seen? Yeah. Well, hopefully it can come back. We still haven't, you know, it's still all up in the air at the moment. But have you seen like a big effect within the West Bank cities to do with the lack of tourism during Corona?
Remember when we went to Bethlehem, Corey, when things were not yet normal, but we went to Bethlehem, and Corey, tell them what we didn't see.
Meaning any tourists?
Any people at all.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, it's
really
dead.
Really? That's sad. That is very sad.
And it's Bethlehem.
Yeah. Birthplace of Jesus. Yeah.
Do you guys have any other content aside from Ask videos that you think you'll make in the near future?
TikTok
no, I don't
TikTok
think any
videos
plans.
of Corey dancing.
Every so
Why are you
often,
laughing? Yeah.
because every so often she films me and says, "I'm putting this on something," and I go, "Yeah, okay, it's fine."
I have a lot of content of her.
I don't
wait.
really like Instagram and TikTok and those things, but when she forces me to put something on, I'm like, okay, if it's small, I don't mind.
I love it. I love it. We are coming towards the end of our time for tonight, guys, but it's been a really, really wonderful chat. There is just one last question here from our good friend Or. He said, the last time a big agreement happened is when the Palestinians felt the weakest. Is it possible that accords can push another compromise, or Oslo 3 is not possible? So,
I'll give you my answer quickly. I don't know. I mean, people always love to. I work with political scientists at Tel Aviv University, who are professors, and they love to go on and on about what's going to happen. And what I notice is no one's ever really actually 100% right. There are always little elements that end up being true, but most of them are when they try to speak about the future, it's not really right. So I have no idea if they would ever, if they agree to it. I think if the Arab countries got involved and pushed Palestinians into making any kind of agreement in any way, that would be great. Because I think everyone is tired of this, and I think both. I mean, the Israelis have less to lose. Well, they have a lot to lose, but they have less reason to want to do something because it's easy for Israel. The Palestinians have more reasons, but again, their ego gets in the way, so they need a little prodding. So I'm a big believer in having any kind of here we go again, more sirens. Any kind of being pushed into any kind of agreement. As long as everyone gets something out of it and people are safe. So, Mon Amie, do you think there's any chance of that there could be an agreement?
Remember when we asked, I mean, I know I start my answers with, remember when we asked this and that. This just shows how much I learned from the project. But we once asked, what are you willing to compromise, or are you willing to compromise for peace with Israel? Most of the answers were, there's nothing left to compromise. We've been compromising and giving up, and also this is a negative word in Arabic, to compromise. Palestinians, just as Corey said, maybe we need some prodding, but nothing too violent, hopefully. But yeah, I guess people are also sick of it. People just want to live. For the love of God, just give us some borders, some resources.
Yeah.
I don't want to say our own currency because I don't know what our economy would look like, but we just want to move on and move forward.
I completely understand that, Mon Amie, and I really hope and I pray that things will work out and things will get better for both peoples, and it can be done. I'm a true believer in this. I know it's like I'm regurgitating the same lines every time, but the British and Irish were at war for longer than the Israelis and Palestinians, and they live a very peaceful life now. And as someone who lived in both of those countries, I can vouch for, such a great existence now, whereas, 50, 60 years ago, it would not have been the same at all. True. So it's very, very possible. Very, very possible over here. Yeah, let's hope. Indeed. So we are coming towards the end of the time for today. I'd like to thank our guests. Mon Amie, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. You're welcome to come back whenever you like. Just let us know when you're available and we'll get you right back on. And, you're more than welcome. You're more than welcome. And Corey, same goes to you. Thank you so much for coming back on and being with us. And Anna, great to have you back on the show. It's been a while. I hope the new job's going well and everything's going well over there in New York.
Thank you.
Great talking to you guys, and great meeting you, Anna.
Nice to meet you.
Thank you, one and all. It was great meeting you. Inshallah, we'll do this again soon. Amir, come film with us. I hope you come
Yalla.
with us when the weather is okay.
If
Yeah.
next time I'm in the area, can I come film with you guys as well? That would be like a dream.
Please, of course.
I would love
Of course.
to.
It's an invitation
Yalla.
to, only smart people. So
Yeah,
no,
so I'm
seriously.
waiting for
Inshallah.
Corey to let me know next time, Mon Amie, and I'll be over. No problem.
Inshallah.
Okay.
Inshallah, the weather will be okay and we'll go somewhere not too far. We're not going to Hebron, Corey.
Okay.
Okay.
Now we have to go to Hebron. I have to.
Allah ma'ak. Okay.
Okay,
Good
so-
night, you guys.
Thanks,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Thank you, and thank you to all our viewers. Wishing everybody a good week. All the best. Take care. Until next time.
Salam.